thank you all for joining in today. My name is Brandon Wright, and I'm really excited to bring you guys this super special episode. It's technically not a part of anything that I do, but it is a part of TCA Health, which is a clinic out here in the south side of Chicago working to make waves on ensuring better health care for Black and brown folks on the south side of Chicago. And this podcast is called Resilience and Renaissance. This was a baby dream of mine, honestly. When I think about the words resilience, when I think about Renaissance, it all kind of coincides, you know. Renaissance the definition is to be reborn, to be and renew and different things, and to find, you know, something new. And this event as well is called Wellness and Renaissance, which throughout this whole event we were able to basically find a new aspect of self-care, self-worth, of who we are, but also tying that into our resilience, because as Black and brown folk, we are naturally resilient. So all of those things kind of coincide, and I wanted to do this podcast to have more discussion about our resilience, our renaissance, what renaissance means today, and our wellness overall together. And I brought in a special friend. I'm going to grab your hand because that's how I am. I brought a special friend with me today to discuss this, my friend Terry.
Hi.
We're going to have just a great casual conversation and just discuss a couple of things about, you know, what it means to be resilient. What does renaissance today look like for our community? And also, what does overall wellness look like for our community overall? So,
Hello,
y'all see, I know some of y'all probably won't be able to see the shades depending on how you are checking this out, but friend is literally looking great. I look like a Boy Scout. I look like I'm about to serve some Thin Mints, not these beautiful shades and this beautiful light, this beautiful hair that my friend has. But how you feeling today? I'm so happy that you were able to join me.
I'm so happy that this event is here and it exists. This is absolutely wonderful. I think that I'm feeling great. I got these glasses just because this is my Renaissance look.
This is your Renaissance era. This is your Renaissance theme.
I'm ready for the Queen to land here in Chicago. So
she's going to be on the 22nd?
22nd and the 23rd. I'm going to see her on that last day.
On the last day. I'm going to see her on September 27th. I'm going to be there in NOLA.
Oh, yes.
It's going to be a whole nother show, I guarantee.
Oh, you know she
I guarantee.
It's going to be that down dirty show, South show. I love it.
Yes, but you know, I think that it's just super important and super imperative that as we talk about Renaissance, we kind of got to bring up this, you know, world-renowned album in a way. You know, Beyoncé touched on a lot of different topics and a lot of different things with this album, but also she was able to really center Black and brown queer lives.
Yeah.
She also were able to center the HIV epidemic, which both of us working in tirelessly in different things. So I wanted to ask you, like, one, how did that kind of make you feel? I could definitely go first, but I want to, like, just to say that an artist that, you know, really has a following within the queer community, but also understands and also shared a personal testament about her Uncle Johnny, which, you know, we all knew she had a queer uncle, but we didn't know that, you know, they were living with HIV and different things like that. And as she kind of becomes more personable, she has this, you know, the storytelling that I think that comes so natural for her, and that it just made, you know, like I said, us feel seen, and that does not happen a lot for our community.
So I guess to just answer that, how I felt about the whole, with this album with Renaissance, I've loved Beyonce since I was 6 years old, and I have no shame in that. I think that when I think about Beyonce sharing her story about Uncle Johnny, I think about my Uncle Junior. Like, I had an uncle who I loved, who I grew up with, who also died of AIDS complications in 2005. This was somebody who was the first Black man in my life who wasn't a bully to me, wasn't somebody who told me I needed to man up and be tough or anything. He was the first Black man that let me just be a child, and just like, that just made me feel safe in a way that, like, young Black boys don't get to feel safe, you know? And when he passed away, I didn't understand, and like, I have all these complicated feelings around it. But I think what Renaissance, hearing that album, even that song, where the part Uncle Johnny made this dress, that cheap spandex, it looks a mess. Like, that part for me, it just really was just uplifting. It did make me remember how special this man made me feel as a child, and how I like to try to create that with other relationships that I have with people in my life. So there's so much similarity. Like, me and Solange had the same birthday. Like, I'm part of the family.
You're connected. You're a nose. I get it. I didn't know that.
Terry knows. Terry knows. But They don't like
I didn't know.
I'm adopted, but we don't talk about that right now.
That's okay. It's giving Bianca Lawson. But at the same time, we love her too. Okay, we love her. Kendra, the Vampire Slayer, we love her too. But wait, okay, listen, I know her for all her roles.
But I know you were saying that it brought a lot up for you too, with just like what Renaissance was, and like what was like. I wanted to hear your take on this too.
So I really feel like it was, for me, it was just a centering of it all. Like I said, like it's just more so about having someone and actually understanding the difference between allyship and accomplice. You know what I'm saying? We have those conversations all the time where we have allies who, you know, who will show up, who will be a part of the fun stuff and everything like that, but when the time gets tough, you don't find them. You know, it's like, like Rihanna said, you know, when you have your friends, you know, they want to hang out with you, they want to party with you, tell them to pull up. You know, it felt like, you know, Beyonce kind of pulled up a little bit, you know, and I think that to have that, and I think the most kind of, I think, best part for me with that is she did pull up, and I think that she brought her personal story, and I think that with her magnitude and her, you know, what do you call that? Kind of just like her presence and everything like that, to have this overall conversation about HIV. And she really didn't have to do much but share her story, you know, for folks and for our work to actually be, you know, kind of just propelled or amplified in a way. And even when it comes down to the album itself, it's a house music album. And who invented house music?
Come on now, let's talk about Chicago.
Chicago and queer folks, black and brown queer folks, you know. We were centered in so many ways, and I think that that's never really happened for black queer people. And I think that for me, like, I mean, like I said, since 6 years old, you know, since Jumpin', so good, no part 2, it's been giving, you know, all of that. But like now, it's definitely like, you know what, it feels good to have this accomplice next to me, not this ally, this accomplice, this person who is willing. Okay, Serenity, it's it's good to have this accomplice next to us. And by the way, I don't know if y'all know, this is a live studio podcast right now. We're giving production. It's fun.
We live in the studio.
Yeah, you know, we live, and it's really good. I think we can kind of interact and have some good conversation with everybody in the room. But yeah, y'all just heard my niece just kind of, you know, giving out on us a little bit. But I want to ask you, since we're on the topic of Renaissance, I know I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but we'll get back. We'll refocus, right? Yeah, we'll refocus before I lock myself out this iPhone. I want to ask you, how do you feel when you hear these lyrics from Beyonce's album? Okay, so it's giving, she's a god, she's a hero, she survived all she been through, confident, damn, she lethal. Might I suggest you not fuck with my sis. Why? Because she's comfortable. What does that mean today for someone who is black and brown, queer, who works and lives in all these intersections, which intersectionality, y'all, is all the dimensions that y'all live and work through, just so y'all know. That's like the Cliff Notes version, but look it up for a better detailed definition. But for someone to live in a multifaceted or a very intersectional life, what does it mean to be cozy in your skin?
You know, that's a really good question, because when I first heard that song, the first person I thought about was my best friend. Okay. Like, she is someone who literally, like, you cannot tell her that she is not, and excuse my language, but a baddie. Same. With all that being said, I think that, like, it is so rare that, like, queer black people are taught to be confident, to have this level of, I'm walking out here in 5-inch heels right now on 85th and Cottage Grove, and you know, I do that because I'm comfortable with who I am and things, but that's not something I grew up with seeing. You know, I think that's a part of this Renaissance era, this idea of whatever you walk in pride in it. And even in the work I do in HIV, like prevention, research, care, I don't think that HIV is this bad thing. I think it's something we have to understand. It's a part of our community. It's something to be proud about. The resilience, the prevention, the people who are living with HIV, who are a part of that prevention and a part of that work. We have so much to really, like, be emboldened. And I, like, come back to my best friend, because that is a person who always has pushed me to always be, like, that confident, that cozy person that's like really embodying my power. And it's like, it's hard sometimes in this world. I see it's hard for her. She's a black queer woman in the world, but you know, I think that it's really about, like, how we are being represented, and, like, this album is just a beautiful love letter to just
a love letter.
Like,
I love
queer
that word.
People in community. That's what I think about it when I think about those
Period.
words specifically.
I love that. I love that you said it's a love letter, because I do feel like that's what I got from the album, but mainly from Cozy too, because you know, like I said, people are fighting for their lives daily, no matter what it is. If that is through, you know, appearance, if that is through work, if that is through the things that you have to navigate in order to survive, there's a fight there, you know. And being able to be comfortable in that, being able to be cozy, being able to understand that things are a journey, you know, in that aspect. And I think that is what actually she's talking about when she says she's a vibe, she's a hero. She's talking about that journey in that moment. I think people are starting to realize the autonomy and the strength that comes with a journey.
Yeah,
and I think I love that.
Not linear. I think that's one thing I'm learning at just recently 30.
Okay, listen,
let me tell you, it's literally the path is about the journey, not about the destination. And
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and spin us back a little bit, because I want to get into... Yeah, we're going to spin it back a little bit and get into just the work and different things like that. But I also want to get into some personal tea, because I love telling the story. But he just left, my brother, because this has something to do with him. But I want to ask you first, what was the first time you ever heard about HIV? Do you remember? Do you recall that moment?
Yes. So I think the first time I heard about HIV, I had been outed to my mom. She had this whole conversation with me about, like, you know, HIV and AIDS, more specifically. At the time, I didn't know that her brother died of AIDS complication. I didn't find out until I actually came out. I think that my first experience was something I wanted to know about. We had this, I don't know if this is a shout out to CPS, but if you went to Chicago public schools, they have this thing called History Fair. And I remember I had a history teacher, Miss Mack, and she wanted us to figure out what did we find innovating. We had the topic of History Fair was to, like, find something that was innovative through, like, Chicago's history. And we, me and my best friend at the time, who's still my best friend now, she's literally still sitting in the audience, but we did the HIV and AIDS epidemic of the 1980s here in Chicago. And that's what really got me invested in just wanting to be a part of, like, this community, like reading those articles. And I encourage you, if you are part of community, please go down to the Chicago Public Libraries downtown in the archives and read some of those old articles, or they have an archives up north somewhere. Forgive me, I don't know the location right now, but those articles about what was going on here in the city of Chicago, the treatment for white gay men versus black gay men, the lack of treatment for trans women, the lack of treatment for black women, it really speaks to a culture of shutting people out. And it also speaks to a culture of organizing, because through that, we had so many agencies grow and so many agencies change in how they do work with communities. And I think it's still important to remember how that work is informed. So that's my little long story of
I want you to
how
keep that in mind, though. I really want you to keep that in mind when we talk about the mistreatment and the unfortunate kind of disconnect when it came from women to trans women to, you know, in that aspect, because we'll touch on that later with the documentary. But I'm happy you came back, because I'm about to put you on blast. My first interaction with HIV, or knowing about HIV, I know you're about to gag because you hate when I tell this story, but I actually found out about sex in health class. And when I found out about it, I didn't know all the functions was functioning that way, right? So I turned blue. They called me to the nurse's station. They said, "What's wrong? You almost fainted." And I told them I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know those things. So at the time, my health teacher asked me, you know, if you need some external, you know, kind of conversation, let me know, and I'll actually give you that. I'm like, that's kind, a little weird too, but kind. We'll go with it. But at the time, you know, if you have a sibling, one of the black people rules is that wherever you go, your sibling goes. And I stayed after school, and my brother was like, "Why do I have to stay with you?" I said, "Because Mama said you got to." So afterwards, I ended up telling him, like, you know, like, "Hey, I stayed after because I had to talk about sex." And I'm like, you know, doing like that. And he was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Yeah, I had to talk about sex." He was like, "You don't know about that?" I said, "No." And then he looked at me, because by that time, my brother caught me because I was flirting with somebody at Jamba Juice. Listen, Jamba Juice, that's how long it was. Whoa. And he said, my brother said, "Well, you're gay. Do you have sex that way?" I said, "I don't know." He was like, "Okay, cool." 3 days later, my brother came back with pamphlets, everything. Was like, this is that. If you have sex, you'll die of HIV. And I was like, oh. The way is that's how I recall. That's how I recall. And it wasn't the fact that, it's not the fact that you said it that way, first of all, because even during that time, that's when PrEP actually just hit the shelves, right? We're talking about like 2010, 2012, you know, in that aspect. And I'm pretty sure every article you saw when it come down to gay sex came out to HIV this, HIV that. So it's probably like, you read that and probably comprehended that this is what happens for the gay folks, you know? But he laid it out, and after that, I said, you know what, I ain't having sex ever in my life. So, HIV, you know, I want that. I don't want to die. Trying to have fun. Yeah. So that was the first time I ever heard about it. But at the same time, to kind of think about the science and the things that come, you know, after that and different things, is always kind of appalling and funny to me. And to also understand that, you know, there's other stories out there like that. But I still appreciate you. You know, you definitely came in and helped me out. I appreciate you, Alex. What was your response when you actually learned about HIV or actually knew exactly what it was and what the real science and the real sense behind it was like?
I was confused because I saw that HIV had did all this harm in communities that I was a part of. And I was also just like going up like north and thinking like, oh, I'm part of gay community up north. And I saw it be used as a way to kind of shame people, as like a way of a deterrent to like talking to someone or dating someone. And it made me just really want to like unpack some of those like stigmas and prejudice. Anyway, I think that
the wrongfulness.
And like I was so fascinated because I was like, oh my God, you know, I had someone who I cared about die from AIDS complications, and then, you know, I've seen films like Paris is Burning and seen how like it affected Black and brown people such. So when I started going up north, it was about 2010, you know, she was a hot girl out here. Right. But with all that being said, I experienced a lot of Black queer people or Black gay people who were living with HIV and had some form of either shame behind talking about status or the idea that if I'm not living with HIV, I can't really associate myself with someone who is outside of maybe a friendship, you know? And then it became transformed when we started seeing housing instability, where a lot of young people who I started to work with later on just let me know plainly, unless I'm a person living with HIV, I don't have access to housing.
I feel that. I think that my experience was similar, the same with the confusion, because I really started to get immersed within HIV when I started working within HIV. But I honestly just started the job, my previous employer, just because I wanted to get to know community more. I was, I'm from Gary, Indiana. You know, the gays, we're there, but we're not at the same time. So I wanted to go and venture into Chicago after I started school and things to kind of just get my feet wet and get more community. And I just started to notice some of the disparities that came along with, people living with HIV, and I started to realize how much they were congruent to just being a person that is a person of color. Exactly. Like how they intertwine and how it's always that survival mode kind of aspect of things. And it made me realize, it kind of made me like buckle up and be like, so what's really the tea about HIV? Like what's going on? Why is this, like, as much as it is a disease, it's a virus and different things like that, and we treat it as such, or it should be treated as such, most of the dialogue around HIV is stigma, is shame, is different things like that. So I had to kind of centralize myself and figure out that, the barriers kind of start way before you even get to, being in bed with someone.
The barriers start before you even, it's so crazy because the barriers start with just like views on like queer people. I think that
it starts at birth. It starts
at birth. I think that my mom's response to finding out that I was somebody at the time who was bisexual.
Listen, we did it before.
Gender
I gave it 2 days.
Is fluid.
I gave it 2 days.
With all that being said, I think her response was like, I need to teach you about HIV and AIDS, because that's been her response.
Same.
And again, I came out as gay, well, bisexual at the time, but I'm like, that's not what I think I needed, but I think that's what my mom's like, she's 65 now, born in 1958. She's lived through the AIDS epidemic, and she had a brother who died of AIDS complications, so I get the urgency to have that conversation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Same. My mom kind of did the same thing. She was like testing me. My mother was a medical lab technician. She would test me every 3 months, and she would say, "I'm only testing because I don't know what you're doing." I'm just like, "Girl, like we ain't got to do this. I'm telling you, I know what happens. You got to do certain things to get it."
My finger.
And it wasn't prick your finger. Then it was vials. Like she was taking whole blood. I'm busting her out. Okay. But at the same time, yeah, she didn't play no games in that aspect. But when I did let her know, I said, you know what? I know what this is about. I know what HIV is. I know how you get it. Mm-hmm. I said, next time I get an HIV test, I'll let you know. And that's when you know that I'll be having sex. So I think that kind of put her mind at ease in that aspect. Because I was just like, I'm educated. You ain't got to do this for me. But when that time comes, that's when you'll know I'm zesting out here. It's a high, it's a hot boy summer. You know what I'm saying? That aspect. But when I did, she just banged her head on the table for a little while. But, bless her heart, bless Anita's heart. So I want to go ahead and get to our next question as well. As we talked about stigma, as we talked about racism, as we talked about these things that make HIV still exist today. Yeah. And I stole this from Kim Hunt, which is my shero. I love her. And I saw y'all panel. So what is one thing that you could, if you could take away anything from HIV, which could be like stigma, racism, different things like that, what would it be to alleviate a barrier, to have more cohesive, care or understanding within community members? What would that look like for you, and what would you take away?
There's so much.
And it's like one is not bigger than the other.
Right. And that's, it was funny because you sent me these questions and I was looking at that one.
I was like, that's a Kim Hunt.
I was looking at it.
I saw her.
And the thing I thought about was there's a lot of shame in HIV. There's a lot of shame in the idea of being a person who living with HIV. There's a lot of just ignorance. Mm-hmm. I think there needs to be so much more education around HIV in schools, in subsets. I think that until I started doing the work, I did not know HIV was as rampant in injection substance users communities as it is in other communities, I also didn't know that if Black women were affected by HIV the way they were until I started doing this work. But I also saw the misogyny in HIV treatment for women, especially Black women. I guess if I could take anything, it's just the education of HIV is, excuse my language, it's piss poor at best. And because of it, it leads to racism in treatment of people living with HIV or HIV prevention or misogyny. And that's where a lot of shame comes in. And we just keep repeating that vicious gross cycle. Yeah.
It's all intersecting, and that's the one thing that I think that it's crazy to say that we all are intersecting or intersexual beings and different things like that, like intersectional beings. But when something becomes intersectional, that's because something is evolving and growing and different things like that. As you are a person who has intersectionality, you are evolving, you are growing, you're adding new things, you are letting go of new things. Yeah. And when I think about things that intersect for HIV, that means that this thing is growing. It is something that is still continuing. Something about this system is still Metamucil in a way, and it's like we have to start disrupting that. And that's why I'm like, which one where do you start? What I'm saying? Like, at what point, where do you start? But I think that since it's very so intersectional and there's a lot of different things, it's kind of hard to pinpoint that. I think that for the most part, for me, I've seen, like I said, when it started at birth, I'm gonna go back to that kind of conversation. Yeah. When we think about, gender roles, when we think about all these different things that affect us when we're growing up, it kind of puts us in a box for people to not be naturally who they are. Yeah. And also having to coincide with different rules and different things that can, necessarily shape the decisions and shape actions and different things. And when those things are shaped in a way that is not cohesive for that person, people fall into, things that they have no business being in, or just because if you could be yourself or understand thyself in that aspect, you don't get the chance to, live your best life. And I think that, how do you get into that? How do you kind of separate that? I don't know.
This is something I recently came across and it's just one thing I just want to put out there too. I wish we could take away the stigma that HIV is a bad thing, mm-hmm. AIDS is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. This is just something I'm seeing in communities, specifically among gay Black men, mm-hmm. with calling out someone else for having HIV. We need to stop that. Yeah. One, it's against the law because that's people's health information, mm-hmm. and you can go to jail for that. But two, living with HIV is not a bad thing. It's not a read. It's not a jab, and we need to stop it as a community.
And if I can pivot a little bit on that, I think that the pandemic helped out a lot because, you know, we kind of got a chance to see what natural selection looks like within a virus, right?
Yeah.
No matter what you did, somebody caught COVID. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things that is very much
Not me yet.
Not good for you. That's like, I mean,
Listen, test my blood, y'all.
listen, it's a thing. What happened? I'm like, not get off of work. But like, you know, COVID was one of those things where you had the natural selection piece, and folks were getting it and contracting it just by, you know, like I said, going out every day, getting your essential needs and different things like that. And that's the same selection of HIV. That's exactly how it happens. And I think that people kind of were able to open up their minds, to open up their, you know, thoughts to that, you know, HIV is a virus and not something that I said, you know what, let me get up today and put on my HIV hat and walk around and, you know, just be you know, infected, or the words that they use, and or dirty. That's the one that got me.
Oh God,
that's the one that got me.
Erase that
that's
word.
The one that got me. Or
HIV.
Or if you're on the apps, you clean? What do you mean? I wash.
I just washed my ass.
Yes, I
did. But like, I'm so glad you brought that up, because just 2 more seconds to that point. People, like, we have to take this, like, terms like clean, dirty, like that has nothing to do with HIV. It's also rooted in most white misogyny.
Period.
And when we even use it in black communities, we are using the white man's tool. People think I'm some radical when I say things like this, but you calling somebody dirty because they living with HIV is like using the white man's tools.
You know, I call it rooted in Reagan, because, you know, Reagan was during that whole time, and he did nothing for people with the HIV. So I call it rooted in Reagan. So I'm going to listen. As much as we got to pivot, I do love those points. You know, let's pivot a little bit more into the documentary, because, like I said, Renaissance, the album, is about storytelling. This documentary that you're doing is all about storytelling.
And part 2 will be out in September.
Come on, part 2. We need a screening for that.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of ways that we were able to learn about HIV was through storytelling. I remember this too. This is another example. I remember watching A Different World. We used to watch Different World every day in the morning. And I remember there was one episode, and it seemed like, because my father used to wake up with us in the morning, it seemed like he was just kind of a little bit heavy on the side of like not wanting us to watch it. It was an episode where Tisha Campbell was a student, and she shared her experience with living with HIV. And seeing I think the nuance of humor was good for me. But at the same, funny enough, because, you know, that's how we are. We black folks, we laugh at things to get through stuff. But seeing the humor, but also seeing the facts, and how people like Mr. Gaines. That's why I love Mr. Gaines. Mr. Gaines is one of my favorite characters. He stuck up for Tisha Campbell, and they spoke to the ignorance. They spoke to even some of the being afraid, the fear, and different things like that. I think that has been, with that being a form of storytelling, has always helped to amplify it. And I see this documentary kind of turning into that. In a more serious way, but at the same time, this literally outlines a history of Chicago. And I think that's what's super imperative, especially for our work and what is over here. So I want to ask you, what made you get involved? Because that is a cute one. I love that documentary.
So I have to, first of all, give my praises to the black men who have poured into me. And that's been really hard to find in this type of work. Like, I'm gonna try not to get emotional, but first, there's Dr. Noel Green.
And Gary, Indiana too.
Yes.
I was about to throw my G, but I can't.
I love the Gary, Indiana black men. Y'all really are
we have a sense of greenness, but at the same time, we understand the need.
It's also about Noel has always been someone who I felt that if I was in any situation, that whether they are trying to help me elevate myself in life or in my career, they saw an opportunity, and it's
those intersections and other things.
They were just like, hey, this looks like something that you'd be really good at, and they sent me an email. I also want to speak to Stanford Gaylord, who's also a part of the film too, who just really I sent an email about my interest, and they saw my email, and it's like, hey, let me clean this up for you a little bit, you know. You know, I'm a little hood bitch, but you know.
Listen.
But with all that being said, talk me through the process. There was times where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this and things like that. And I will say, in the second part of the film, it is a lot more intimate. I ain't gonna lie, they catch me crying on film one time, but. I I don't like crying, but
you're a Cancer.
I know, and I don't, they think that we like emotional, but let me tell you, we're emotional. We just hate crying. Thank you.
That's a Cancer too. That's true.
Cancer, Leo, Cancer right here. But yeah, so like those were the people. Like Noel got me into the film, and then Stanford kept me into the film. And yeah, that's kind of what brought me to this project. And a lot of it also my work in HIV. I've been doing HIV prevention work since I was 19 years old, and I'm really proud to say that. That's anything from standing on the Boys Town streets giving out free condoms to drunk white people, or letting them know they can go in this van and get a free HIV test, and now I'm 30 years old and talking about that and like what that work has been like, and being able to try to inform that work to be done better and differently, because it's not that it's not always done good, it just can be done differently. So
I love that you kind of spoke about leadership. Leadership is something that's super important. Like I said, I'm from GI. There was not a lot of moments around that. And I know you actually sat on a panel with my mentor David Dye, who I'm just like, I owe a lot to. That is like, I don't even know if I should call him my father, brother, uncle, whatever. But he's just been there, like you said, to really attest to more than just meeting the need of being, a person who is providing care, but also meeting the need of your personal development, your emotional development, your, professional development. Like they are just like intact with understanding that one, they have been there, done that, but at the same time, you are, an up and coming generation and different things, and that, there's a need to kind of guide and help and understand it, and to, I guess, pass the torch. Let me say that more than anything.
And that's one thing I want to like touch on real quick before we move on is, I want to say, like I said, I've been doing this work since I was 19, and I will say I've met some influential black men who've tried to help me inform my work. I will say, though, a lot of them have been tied to, even if they're black and gay, they have been tied to black respectability politics. And a lot of them know how to play the game, but because in result, they will tell me to tone down my queerness or my blackness. And I will say that has been damaging, and I am really glad that I am in this space where I develop relationships with black men who want to pour into helping me grow professionally in the way that makes me comfortable. Black men in HIV work get exploited so much, and I think that like even that acknowledgement is something I brought up a lot in the second part of the film. Is like, even while doing this work, I think that Noel gave me something that like, and I've known Noel for years, but like in this interaction, they gave me a platform to really build on something where I had black mentors before who would think sending me to a professional development course where I wouldn't get a certificate or degree that would go toward any of my education would be develop me into a manager or whatever. And none of that ever worked for me. And in the way that like, there's somebody saying you have a voice, like, and this voice needs to be like, my art is through my voice, it's through like my passion and the way I speak, and it'll always be through that. And someone like identifying that and seeing that and being like, let me give you a platform. Like I will never not be able to speak of like praises to black men like Noel and Stanford who have poured into me in ways of like, I don't want to change you. I want to give you the spaces to grow that feel amplify. Authentic to who you are.
Yes.
So yeah.
And that's again not an ally but an accomplice.
Exactly.
That is an accomplice.
Yes.
And I think that with that, I just want to state that again. When I say like allyship versus being accomplished, it's all about magnifying and being down for whatever that process looks like versus forging that process for somebody.
Yes.
Especially within like mentorship and leadership, that happens a lot where you the mentee, you be like, what did I sign up for? Like why am I doing what you telling me to do all the time? And I think that sometimes you can get lost within that vein. So shout out to the good leadership that we have been exposed to.
Yes.
And like I said, I know them from both hands. My mentor both hands. It's like we're blessed in that.
Yeah,
aspect.
and
So
I've
heard
a
of
good
different
experience
things.
with the mentor you mentioned too. Like, just like I really wish sometimes those were the people who are leading some of these agencies.
Yeah. Yeah,
really
especially these larger institutions, as we say. So we
let's do not right now.
So I'm gonna ask you two last questions.
Okay.
And I love these questions, especially the last one. The last one is always my tearjerker. It makes me feel good to ask folk. But I want to ask you, when you think about the term of Renaissance and finding a renewal or being reborn and different things like that, how do you apply that, or what do you think could be applied as a rebirth or a rebirth to the work of HIV that would be effective for us to propel our work? So, like, what do you think could be something that could be reborn or done over, or something that we can find a revival in?
So right now we know in our country there's been a lot of policy implementation around LGBT people. Let's just say what it is. I think that we need to start educating people the difference between sex and the difference between gender. That's huge.
Common misconception.
I think that like they're literally creating laws that like you cannot actually teach these things. Like, I'm gonna say gay for as long as I live, but there's some places that tell you don't say gay. But with all that being said, like, that's so detrimental to how we like educate people, you know. I think that when I think about how I was educated about sex, I think about a gym health class that was in the basement where we learned about STIs. We saw horrible pictures and maybe a column about HIV. And even then, it was like, well, if you're not gay, you don't got nothing to worry about. You know, I think that here in the city of Chicago, we have things like communities in schools that do a really great job of partnering with CPS schools and local nonprofit organizations that can go into schools and actively, healthily teach like sexual education that some schools don't feel comfortable creating curriculum around, you know, and like more of those programs need to be created across the country, and not just in Chicago. I think that like sometimes the privilege we have living in the state of Illinois is we kind of are safe from a lot of these policies or laws that are draconian and really are pointed at like putting women down and uplifting and amplifying the voices of white males. So it's really about education. I think that it's also about like the educators can't look how they traditionally have looked. They can't be white old women. They can't be, they have to be sex workers. Yeah. Because sometimes the sex worker is the only person who can talk to you about safer sex techniques. And like safer sex may also be learning about what consent looks like and what the signs to look like when someone is not respecting your boundaries. And people don't talk about that enough in just like health education, sex education, and that's one of my whole things is like if we're gonna have conversations about sex, we're gonna have conversations about sex all together, consent, boundaries, and of course all
attraction.
Exactly.
I need you to know what you're doing before you lay down. Let's talk about the process of that.
Sometimes people just go in the room, drop their drawers, and then you don't know this person's name, but now you're in the room with me, and we have to talk about like risk factors, and you might not even know what your risk factors are.
And you can't comprehend. You don't even know that you got a risk factor. That's real tea. I say that all the time, and I think that at TCA we actually have an intervention called SPA, which is sexual prevention and awareness, and that's geared toward it's geared toward teens. And the first model is really the first SPA day. That's what we say. The first SPA day is about the process of what's going on before you actually get to that point of wanting to have sex. We talk about the pheromones. We talk about, you know, what is going on internally inside your body. What are your social cues? What is this? What is consent? All those great things. And those are the things that people really skip through. You know what I'm saying? I think it's really like skip through. It's like it's a process to this whole attraction thing. You know, whether you're attracted in that moment or you're attracted long term. Let's talk about it. There's a process to it. So I'm happy that you brought that up for sure. I think that mine is definitely, I want to tackle this wellness piece because I feel like our community has been, I mean, like I said, multifaceted. We've always been able to sustain. We've always been able to survive, but I want us to get out of this space of survival.
Exactly.
I want us to get
for the living, not just for surviving.
Come on. And it's like, I want us to get out of this space of just continuously having to choose other options over what your necessities are, or choosing a necessity over those different things. So I think that overall wellness piece, and I know that we talk, they social determinants of health you down wherever you go.
Oh, God.
That is I hate saying social determinants of health now, because everybody will use it, but it's like, again, where's the action behind it?
And it's not social determinants of health, like what they're like. That's like what I've learned is these are not social determinants of health. These are social outcomes of health.
Period.
Like literally,
Outcomes
these are like going to be my outcomes.
If this
these
is going there, if this is going there, I will be here. It's not an option. This is going to happen. This is insured.
Yeah, it's not an option. Yeah,
it's insured. Yeah. And I think that as we kind of move into, like I said, even with the legislation and different things that are going on right now, we have to get out of that vein of that these things are an option, or different things. I think also, I mean, for them, and it's nothing but bigotry, but there's a lot of conversation around it being optional or things like that. It's just, that's your bigotry showing, not the outcomes, but the bigotry of what you're thinking and all that different stuff. So I think that those things coincide. So for final, to end off our podcast, like I said, this is my favorite question and different things. I want to ask you, in the world that you live in right now, in your intersection, in your identity, what would you claim, or how do you vision a healthy community looking like? What does that look like for you after everything is said? And let's say we don't have the social determinants no more, we have social outcomes. Like, let's say all these things are, we've done our work, even though we may not see it in our lifetime. Right. We've done our work. We have been a part of this thing. We have, ensured health, safety for all. What does that vision look like?
Okay, so I recently went to a Black Pride event, I want to say last weekend, and they had the African and Caribbean Festival on one side, and then it was gated off, and it was $35 to get in before 4 p.m. And then on the other side, you had Black Pride Fest, and it was like kind of closed off in the back area. And this is no shade to any event. I'm just explaining what it looked like. Mm-hmm. But with all that being said, Black Pride was gated off, private kind of like setting. It was a free event, but the is highly security and highly policed.
That happens, but it's not okay.
What I envision, a world that I would be comfortable and happy and proud to live in, is we can have a Black Pride Fest that is a part of an African and Caribbean Fest, because African and Caribbean people also are queer, transgender, non-binary like people as well. It felt like I had to choose between being like my African ancestry or my queer identity, and I don't believe in a world that I should have to choose between those. I think that like they actually complement each other very well. And that's where I see it. I think that like I see a world where Black people are not separated because of misogyny and femphobia and transphobia and homophobia. We see the beauty in all Blackness, and we do everything to protect it at all costs.
To protect it. I love that.
I think that like that's the one thing we talk about doing, but we often don't do. And I see queer Black people do a great job of protecting each other in community, but I don't see that always extended in all areas in Black community. There are times where I want to protect Black women, but I don't know if that means that I will be killed for protecting this Black woman because this hate this man has for my femininity and protecting this Black woman and just being bigger, and he might think I might be this. Anyway, but I think that like my ideal world is like where I don't have to choose between either am I Black or am I queer, but I can be both, and it can be accepted in the communities that I come from, because in my queer community, my Blackness is met with resilience, and I think a little back push sometimes, like, oh, maybe you're being too sensitive about this, or things like that. And I'm like, no, I just don't agree, and you are actually being racist. And then a lot of times in my Black identity, well, it's not about gay shit. You know, this is just about black people and like
it's that
black,
navigating,
like,
it's that choosing, it's that putting
that
one down to uplift
consciousness.
another. Yeah. I agree. I think that if I have to put it in like layman's terms, or just something like I think you touched to a lot of it, so I'm just gonna say like it looks like freedom to me.
Yeah.
I think like, you know, overall showing up how you are, who you are, in whatever entity you choose to, like I said, having to embody all of that, not some, put down one to pick up another.
Yeah.
Different things like that, and not having to navigate any systems that are not created for you, and different things like that would be an ascension of freedom that I think we got. I don't want to say time, but we got to get there. There's some way we gonna try to get there somehow. But I know that the work is tirelessly done and continuously done by yourself and me.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm just saying, like,
behind us.
And I was about to say, friend, we're about to get up there where we're gonna have people behind us.
Listen,
and I gotta toss to somebody. I don't know how that's gonna go.
I see you in the CEO spot, just like me somewhere.
On,
so I do believe that like it is really about us taking those steps to like understand that like if this agency is saying that they're doing the work but community doesn't feel it, why are we giving all our money to that agency? I don't believe in evil institutions and agencies. I believe in flawed policies and procedures that allow for institutions to grow to be as big as they are and cut the market off for LGBT healthcare in a way that smaller local agencies who don't have those hard to reach populations, because let's face it, those populations aren't hard to reach for all people. It's hard to reach for you. You know, they shouldn't be getting that type of money. It should be those agencies.
And don't cut me a quarter of the check.
Or try to partner with me or
I'm
collaborate
doing
with
the
me.
work. Don't cut me a part of the check.
So you can get my numbers.
So you can access me. No, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
So as we change systems, as we have more dialogue like this, friend, I just want to uplift you, tell you that you're doing an amazing job.
Thanks for having me.
I love you.
Please have me again.
I surely will. We're going to see if we can do Renaissance and Resilience podcast part 2.
Listen. I'll have to do a recap after the concert.
Okay, and you have to do a recap for number 2, part 2. So we'll definitely try to see what we can do about that.
We got to wait till you go to New Orleans and listen.
After New Orleans, after the second drop for HIV and a journey to zero, we're going to recircle everything. Before we go, I do want to say again, thank you to TCA Health for allowing us to have this space and create and cultivate this space to have this conversation. I know our HIV department hasn't been around for a long time, but we've been able to do some great things in partnership, and seeing that this is, you know, a priority for community. It definitely empowers me as an HIV coordinator, but it definitely also, the products we're able to produce for community is definitely beyond, you know, any position and different things like that. And also shout out to EVLVE Creative, who is back here working the camera and giving us this great production for us to be able to share. And like I said, share this story and let it live through social, let it live through all media. It's funny how I think that that's one of the ways that most things live nowadays, but we'll be able to say we made our mark and we had this conversation, and that we held folks accountable with knowledge and understanding and education. So before that, you know, everyone, this was, again, Resilience and Renaissance.